All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. It looks like the plenary is all finished, so I guess we can jump right into our session. So aloha mai kākou. My name is Tisha. Thank you for joining us today for Dr. Juana Suárez's presentation, Calm After the Storm, Home Movies, Family Memories, and the Dana Case in Spain. I will be moderating the session today. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So if you can, please hold your questions until then. We'll be moderating here and on Zoom as well. And so I'll introduce Dr. Juana Suárez to you. Dr. Suárez is an associate professor and Latin American media scholar at the Tisch School of Arts, Martin Scorsese Department of Cinema Studies at NYU, and where she also is the director of the NYU Moving Image Archiving and Preservation Program, or MIAP. Her work relates to film, media archives, administration of memory institutions, Latin American cinema, cultural studies and literature, women's and gender studies, and immigration studies. She is a very well-published author, and she coordinates the Audiovisual Preservation Exchange, or APEX, a collaborative transformative memory project that has had editions in 11 Latin American countries, as well as Spain, Ghana, and Greece. She is currently serving as a trustee of the Flaherty Film Seminar and on the board of directors of the Digital Preservation Outreach and Education Network, funded by a Mellon Foundation grant. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Dr. Juana Suárez.
Thank you so much, Tisha, for your introduction, and thank you, everybody. It's a little bit strange, this setting, because I cannot see you, but I really appreciate that you are joining me this afternoon. So, as Tisha might have mentioned, my presentation is called Calm After the Storm, Home Movies, Family Memories, and the Dana Case in Spain. I am not going to be talking about resources, so I want to make that disclaimer. I think one of the ways to approach conversations about disaster have to do with resources, and they are absolutely important. Just a reminder to everybody that every association has plenty of resources on disaster recovery, and just last year the FIAF came with a wonderful material that probably many of you know, the handbook for disaster. There are documents here for disaster planning and preparedness and disaster recovery. But I am not really going to be talking about, I am not gonna be talking about resources necessarily. I am going to be speaking about a very specific case. I also want to make a disclaimer that I am not leading this project. I am serving here as a megaphone to amplify the concerns and to amplify the request for support and to explain a little bit what happened. As Tisha said, I have overseen the APEX program for 13 years, and with my colleagues, Salvi Vivanco and Clara Sanchez, we're very good friends and colleagues. They are leading this program, but they cannot be here today. So I am, in a way, supporting their project and speaking about their project. And I will ask you that you please let me know when you are not seeing the screen that I want, because I have a couple of Instagrams to open, and I also have a couple of videos, and they work really well on my computer, but sometimes when you change the settings of Zoom, they do not work. So my presentation, again, is entitled Calm After the Storm. In this case, we're not going to be talking about a storm necessarily, but the very heavy rains that happened in Spain last year that are known as Dana. And I'm going to provide some context to start. A year ago, the YASA conference did not happen in Hawaii. A year ago, we were by September 23rd and 26th, we were in Valencia, Spain. And I don't think that we ever imagined that a couple of days later, this was September 23rd and 26th, the images that you have here are images that I took at the last IASA, the image of the Filmoteca Valenciana, which is the Rialto Theater, and then it's a city that is very much famous for its Art Nouveau architecture, very beautiful city, but I think that we never anticipated that just a month later, this geographical zone was going to face the catastrophic rains that they face. So because it's very difficult thing to explain, Dana translates the depresión aislada de nieves altos in Spanish. That will be like isolated depression of high levels, but is usually called in English cold drop. So I am going to start, and please let me know if you are not seeing the video, Tisha. I am going to start by showing
If you or your
video.
loved one were at Northwell Sleep Center or STARS Rehabilitation between August 2022 and April 2024,
after this
Valencia region.
After this advertisement, it's a little video to illustrate what
Catastrophic flash
happened.
floods in Spain have killed dozens and devastated towns. Meteorologists branded it one of the most intense storms of its type in the last century for the Valencia region. It was caused by a destructive weather system known in Spain as DANA. It's a phenomenon that occurs when cold air blows over warm Mediterranean waters. Hotter air then rises quickly and powerful dense rain clouds are formed. These clouds can stay over an area for hours, increasing the potential for destruction. As well as rain, meteorologists say that the event can also cause large hailstorms or tornadoes. DANA, a Spanish acronym for High Altitude Isolated Depression, differs from common storms. That's because it can form independently of polar or subtropical jet streams. Eastern and southern Spain are particularly susceptible to it due to its position between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, with warm, humid air masses meeting cold fronts in a mountainous region. The pattern is believed to be growing more frequent, and experts like Professor Hannah Cloak say this increase is due to climate change, as a rise in the Mediterranean's temperature and a warmer atmosphere will contribute to more frequent extreme episodes.
We're going to see more of these flash floods in the future. This has the fingerprints of climate change on it, these terribly heavy rainfalls and these devastating floods.
She said even early warnings of heavy rain based on reliable forecasts did little to prevent fatalities.
We must help people understand the danger they're in. We must help people understand, imagine these volumes of water running through their streets and into their homes. Just telling people that it's going to rain quite a lot is not good enough. People don't understand what to do. They don't have the information they need to keep themselves and their families safe.
Good. Are you seeing my PowerPoint back again, Tisha?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So as you can see, something that is very different from the kind of resources that we can find is that here we are dealing with a calamity that is not necessarily happening in an archive, but in a city. You can see that the images are very traumatic. So one of the questions of my presentation, one of my questions of my research is, of course, what is the place of family movies and family memories? Because most of the resources that we have created in archives tackle archives, museums, libraries, cultural heritage that is already organized, but I don't think that we usually think, what can families do when there is this level of rain and disaster? What happens with their photo albums? What happens to their home movies? And what happens to their digital assets? So with this little bit of concept and the definition of what DANA, I will be saying DANA, as we say in Spanish. I'll move forward. This catastrophe left 3 out of every 10 houses damaged. And then it's important to signal that these houses were built during the real estate bubble in flooding areas. Spain, because of digital nomadism and other reasons, faces a real problem of inflation of real estate and scarcity of housing for the amount of people that live and visit. So the real estate bubble is serious. But many of these buildings were for sure built in flooding areas. Around 130,000 houses were affected by the rain, and the death toll by December last year was 232. So we have a map of Spain with Portugal to the left, France to the right, and the areas that were affected were Andalusia, Castile, and Valencia. Valencia was the most affected area. This is also coastal. And you can see, of course, the way the houses were left. There's very useful article written by Pablo Galvez Hernandez, Ginin Dai, and Carles Mutaner. Is an article written for political studies / health studies called The Dana Disaster, Unraveling the Political and Economic Determinants for Valencia's Floods Devastation. Tackle on the following issues: Valencia, a region at risk because these rains usually happen in October. Another chapter of the article, it has to do with political and economic determinants of the Dana flood impact before and during the disaster. And we find 3 mini chapters there. One is the unregulated urban expansion in flood-prone areas. So we have to keep in mind that this is not only an issue of global warming, this is also an issue of gentrification, corruption and governance's failures in urban planning. And I have highlighted here austerity, neoliberalism, and the erosion of disaster preparedness. But we are talking again about disaster preparedness at the level of communities, not necessarily at the level of cultural heritage institutions. And then there are some other parts. I strongly, if you have interest, this is an open access article that you can easily find. So when the water receded, political and societal responses, the impact, final remarks, and a conclusion. And there are some comments there about resilience, which I am not going to touch on that, but I think is a very problematic concept when we talk about disaster recovery. So let me introduce some notes about disaster recovery, home memories, and Dana in the specific case that I am working. So my colleagues Salvi Vivancos and my colleague Clara Sanchez de Esa had just celebrated Home Movie Day precisely on October 27 in Cartagena, which is very close. And Clara had done a Home Movie Day in Valencia on October 28. So actually the rains started on October 26. Home Movie Day was on October 28, and then the very, 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 very heavy rains were on October 29. This is the advertisement for the 2 home movie celebrations. And I think it's a little bit ironical that the disaster happened precisely after the Home Movie Day. So Memoria Celuloides, you have the 2 names here. Memoria Celuloides is an organization devoted to the collection, care, and distribution of home movies. And La Red that's located in Cartagena, Spain, in the south part of the country. And La Red de Cine Doméstico goes nationwide in Spain. So it brings together a lot of people that are invested in the care of home movies. So the wait a second, that the Zoom things always come across the things that I need to read. This is the Instagram of the Filmoteca Valenciana. Of course, the impulse of a lot of people at the very first moment of the tragedy was to knock on the doors of the Filmoteca Valenciana, that very beautiful that I showed you before. But then the Filmoteca said that they reported no damage to their collections, and they offer support for damaged photo collections. So there are 2 things here. We are moving image archivists, but there is also the issue of family photos, which in this case exceeds the number of movies that they have been able to collect. But you have here some films, some DVDs, some tapes, and this is more or less the project started some 3 weeks after the rains, this is a little bit symptomatic of how they found the assets. You also have a floppy disk in this picture. So here you have some reading in Valencian language. Remember that Valenciano is the dominant language in Valencia, but of course everybody is bilingual and they speak Spanish as well. But this was advertising a protocol for recuperation of damaged home movies. This is taken for their Instagram. And so that unfolded a campaign called No me tires, no las tires. Don't throw them away. So no me tires is like, don't throw me away, speaking as if you were a film, or don't throw them away. This was organized and is being organized by La Red del Cine Doméstico. And I am showing these Instagrams because if you are on Instagram, it will be great if you follow them and if you keep an eye on what they are doing. So this campaign, there is something that Clara and Salvi are very clear. The priorities when there is a disaster have to do with housing, food, relocation, transportation, communication, and access. And starting with a campaign that was called Don't Throw Them Away was a way to tell people, don't throw away your films. You have to keep in mind that when the rains happen, the torrential rains were just dragging furniture out of the house, appliances out of the houses. You see all that water that you see in the video, that was also running with beds, sofas, stoves, refrigerators, personal belongings, etc. So they wanted to alert people, if you had films, if you had photo albums, maybe this is not the moment to work on them, but please don't throw them away. We'll find an answer later. The Instagram of social media, of course, there are many misuses of social media, but social media works wonder in these situations. There are illustrations here on how they were finding the collections. They also, of course, did a lot of calls on social media for volunteers, for people that wanted to join. This is the poster that they created with the QR code, with the form for people to fill out the survey and express that they have home movies or photo albums that they wanted to bring. So you have here the no me tires, you have some images, you have a tape, and the QR code that was very handy for people to register their collections. And this is, I will come back to this. This is more recent. This is from July 28th. This is advertisement of workshops that they are doing now. Did everybody see that Instagram? Yeah? Yes? Okay, great. So shall come back to some of these. Okay, I also want to go back to the Instagram. Are we on the Instagram again? Yes? Are we on the Instagram?
No, we can't see it.
We're still on.
Oh, yeah, it is, yeah.
It's their page.
No, I need to go back because I need to show you something. Can you see the Instagram now?
Yes.
Yes? Good.
Yeah.
So you're going to see here a lot of logos, and this one, Fundación Horta Sud, is going to be very important. This Museo Comarcal Horta South. These are like other institutions that have been offering different in-kind support, la Red del Cine Doméstico, but the money has not been enough. But this museum is going to become very important for what I want to show. There was, of course, a call that this can be saved. But again, this was more an alert that hold on to them. We will do something about them later. I want to be back to my PowerPoint and make sure that we are on the PowerPoint. Are we on the PowerPoint? Yes?
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the museum. And what happened with the museum, this is called Museum Comarcal de la Horta Sud. I'm sorry that I'm speaking Valenciano. I don't speak that language. The whole name of the museum is Museo Comarcal de la Horta Sud, Joseph Ferris March. And this is not situated in Valencia. This is situated in a little municipality outside Valencia. Torrent is the name of the city. As you can see, they have a big patio. And this museum became the headquarters of this disaster recovery project. So this is traditionally a museum of arts, costumes, and traditions of the Valencian region, but it is not functioning at the moment. The patio has become a place where people are working in the drying and the drying of photos and the intervention of films. And you are going to see some pictures inside the museum in a second. This is a more detailed data map. This is the zone of Valencia. The brown color marks the extension of the damage, and the museum is located in this little town that, as you can see, was affected, but was not as severely affected as surrounding sites. And this is the status of the collections. Families have been bringing collections that are in this state of disarray. This is an example of photo albums that family had brought. Every family has gotten a crate, and they have been putting the last name, matching this with the Google survey. And they have also been bringing films. This is some of the procedures that they have been doing to films was just to buy some IKEA clothing racks and pin the photos for them to be dry and be able to clean the mud and other residual substances. But the whole museum, the collections were gathered, and the whole museum is full of these kind of collections the way that they look now. A lot of people brought optical media, because if you remember 15, 20 years ago, there were like a lot of private companies that will visit you when you were doing 16 debutant, when you were doing your marriage, anniversaries, birthday of your mother, of your grandmother, etc. And they will come and offer video taping services, and then they will deliver to you a DVD with the photos and the videos. The one that we have on the image is called Our Wedding, Alex and Marianne, and that's what we have inside. So this is the kind of material that we have gotten. Of course, they have gotten a lot of VHS. The VHS was severely damaged. We seek support among the many manuals that are on the internet for disaster recovery. And of course, from Kara Van Malsen from ABP, when she was a student at New York University, she oversaw the recovery of the highlight gallery after Sandy. So we watched the tapes, and we have tried many things. There is a problem with mini DVs. Mini DVs, I will be asking about this at the end of my presentation. Apparently, if you watch them, then you cannot get any image. But we have to improvise a lot of solutions because there are not many people specializing in audiovisual archives. So we got a lot of volunteers, but most of these volunteers specialize in textile, porcelain, painting, wood, any other kind of material, but not in audiovisual preservation. This is my colleague Clara Sanchez de Esa, who is the person that has been overseeing the entire initiative, but she doesn't live in Valencia. She is the coordinator of the archival program at the Cine Escola in San Sebastian, the Basque Country in the northeast part of Spain. There's Clara again washing mini DVs, and of course we have had to give a lot of love to the tapes, dry them, monitor them, open, remove the mold, etc. This is the team of volunteers at the museum. We are forever in debt to them. And this is a little bit what is happening, that the whole museum became a repository for all these photos and to all these tapes and films that are waiting for first aids or deeper treatment. And there has been some press. So this is taken from the Camera and Light magazine in Spain, which is a technical magazine devoted to cinematography. There was another article in March this year in Vogue, Spain. The left, I did 2 screenshots. The left side reads, "Don't throw them away, appraisable and solidarity initiative for recuperation of home movies for those affected by Dana, seeks financial support." This is like a late lesson that we learned when I visited in early March. I told Clara, you need to be ready to provide numbers when they offer you help, but I will talk about that in a second. And the picture on the right says, what do you need for the project to be financially viable? So let me talk about the current status of the project. Of course, the collections have taken over the museum, and the museum wants to be a museum again. So the museum is currently centralizing the basement as a recovery working area, but it is planning to reopen in January 2026. So we really have to find a location for many of these crates. Let me talk a little bit about the status of the, if I can get my slide to work. So some workshops are being facilitated by Clara Sánchez de Esa, Salvi Vivancos, Laura Oliver, and Rosina Herrera. Clara travels often from San Sebastian to Valencia to supervise efforts, but she's paying for these trips because she hasn't received any money from the government or for any institution. It's a little bit, accommodation is a little bit easy because her parents are retired and they have a house in Valencia. But you would imagine that if you are volunteering and paying for a train that is 120 euros every time that you go back and forth, it really, it becomes a toll. Salvi is digitizing tapes in Cartagena because, of course, a problem is to move the collection. And Filmoteca Valenciana is supporting work with some films. Volunteers, many of them conservators of other materials, have learned by doing, proving the need to expand education on audiovisual preservation. Some of the volunteers from the first team of volunteers are now receiving an honorarium. One ONG has offered partial financial support. It's an ONG that is mainly works in India, and they need the project to be presented as a social problem, not as an AB problem or a cultural heritage, so that they can receive the funding. They will be charging for some workshops from now on as a way to make some money. And they have also set a timeline of January 25th to reassess the project. Challenges that they are facing: exhaustion of volunteers. This is a little bit the danger of the word resilience. Resilience, in a way, also takes away the responsibility from the government and the authorities and demands a lot of psychological drain and physical drain from people that are volunteering for free. Clara, of course, is also exhausted, and Salvi is exhausted. They need salaries because they are investing times, weekends, vacation, etc., and nobody is paying them for all this work. They need a project manager and refinement of the project per se. This project was born out of necessity and is not necessarily being led in a cultural heritage institution, but working with a community. They need how to handle the massification of donations because they had received around 400 items for 400 families, which is a lot of material. They need to expedite support from archival institutions. Archival institutions tend to be very bureaucratic. They want people to fill out forms. They want people to do a lot of paperwork, and this adds to the amazing amount of work that they are already doing. They need the government office to understand the value of home memories and the role in the construction of communities, regions, and nation building. Because for the government, these memories are not important. There are some other things that are important, but just imagine what would happen if you lose precious memories from your family. There are two universities in the city, in Valencia, that are helping: the Valencia Polytechnic University and the Valencia University. They both have conservation programs, not AV preservation programs, but they are very divided. So in a city that is relatively small, there is no reason for this division. Ideally, the university should be working together for the benefit of the project. The other thing is that a lot of European archives had called them and say, yes, you can send us the tapes and we will clean them and we will handle them. But for them, it's very difficult to create workflows and to get permission from the families they don't have the money also to be packing all these materials and be shipping them to Italy or shipping them to Madrid or shipping them to Paris for them to get clean and to get digitized, etc. Because it's not many people working and there is no funding. Nobody's gonna ship this for free, and there is also the risk of losing the materials. time, funding, expertise, and of course, a big challenge is that October is around the corner, and October is the rain season, the Dana season. So they don't know what to expect this year. And because they have been recovering the films, they have not had much time to think, what are we gonna do if we face exactly the same problem this year? I think it's still time to think about a disaster plan just in case. In addition to everything we know about disaster recovery as archivists, I want to mention some new lessons that we have learned by doing this project. We need to urge cultural heritage institutions to act as contact points, even if not affected by disaster. If you are trying to save photos or films, it's very discouraging if you call a cinematheque and they tell you nothing happened to our materials, we are not doing anything, so it's not our problem, you see what you can do. Those institutions at least should provide some kind of support and say, yes, we can provide the basement or some kind of solution. Understand locals, work with professionals who can offer contention to distress. One of the reasons because the volunteers are so exhausted is because at the beginning of the project, when they were working with families, they heard many stories. Some of the volunteers also lost families, their houses were affected. So in these things, it's very important to work with psychologists, social workers that will offer comfort and that will offer psychological support for people to be able to enact agency at the same time that they are coping with disaster. I think a big advice, and this is high season for hosting home movie day in our cities and in our institutions, will be to include disaster preparedness handouts, signs, laminated state-by-state guides, booklets. People rely a lot on WhatsApp chains and they rely a lot on digital resources, but you can also have a blackout. You can also lose electricity and people do not know what to do with materials. We believe that the best thing is that when we do home movie day, we give every family a laminated piece of paper on how to keep their materials and how to keep them prepared in the event of a disaster. Urge associations and professional organizations to have support teams, budget emergency funds to allocate with minimum bureaucratic paperwork. A lot of professional associations wanted to know what they wanted to do, but the level of bureaucracy, they were requesting a proposal, they wanted photos, they wanted videos, they wanted a budget, etc. It's very difficult for people when they are volunteering. Encourage volunteers from conservation programs. If there are conservation programs around, even if they don't work on audiovisual, these people are very keen to learn and to learn really fast. If they are students, consider as a university giving credit, academic credit, modifying final assignments and count this work as final assignments, honor the contributions of people that are trying to help. And I think that this is very important. I show that there has been newspapers and magazines covering what they are doing, but we have to be prepared for requests. And I think that there are three important kind of requests that we have to be ready for. Number one, press. When the press approach you, be ready to be a spokesperson with general requests, meeting points, call for volunteers, needed supplies, meals for volunteers. When I went to Spain, everybody was bringing their lunch in a container, and be specific about what kind of funding you can receive and where can you centralize that funding. Visitors or callers, donations, or how you can help guides. If you get people visiting the area or if you get people calling you. If you get visits from officers from the government or funding agencies, have very simple and handy budgets, lists of needs, and specific requests. I was there when there was somebody visiting and wanting to know how much money they could provide, and we were not ready to tell them we need 200,000 euros for a magnetic media unit and salaries and digital storage to be able to digitize what we are recovering. And then the last part of my presentation, of course, how can we help? Moral support to the team. I am going to provide you with their emails and I gave you their social media. getting a little support, just an email, an internal message saying, great job, congratulations, what you are doing is wonderful, is moralizing. They are in much need of technical consulting. They have a lot of questions about magnetic media because Clara and Salvi are experts in film. They are not necessarily experts in magnetic media. Asking what kind of funding they are needing and how it can be facilitated. Organizing community archiving workshops, visiting. We really encourage you that if you are visiting EDUP, the tour, there is free lodging. A convent in the area is providing rooms if you want to spend 2 or 3 days helping. And yes, at the moment, they are able to accept donations in money through Memoria Celluloides if you want to contribute any kind of funding. And then, come on. So this is these are important addresses. Clara Sánchez email, Salvi Vivanco's email, la Red del Cine Doméstico Instagram, and I would like to express my gratitude to Clara Sánchez de Esa, Salvi Vivancos, Rosina Garrido, the volunteers, and the families that have trusted their sweet memories to this project. It should be families, not the family. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Tisha, I don't know how you want to moderate the questions or the comments.
Yeah, let's see. Did we have any questions online yet? We were open for questions if you guys have any online. And I guess while we're waiting, does anyone have any questions here? Yes.
You were speaking a little bit
Oh,
about,
can you hear her?
can you hear
Yes.
me?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You were speaking a little bit about the process of kind of going from like a very volunteer-based grassroots and working with larger institutions and kind of the push and pull of that and the difficulties related to funding versus community and the way that that works. Can you speak a little bit more about the relationship there between the community and the institutions?
Yeah, the thing is that, of course, they have a filmoteca. I do think that I think it's a deeper program because we do not always know how people perceive filmotecas and cinematheques these days. No, for a lot of people, these are like elite places where people go to see art cinema, or where people go to see very specialized cinema, and they do not necessarily are connected to communities that probably consume a lot of mainstream cinema or a lot of things on platforms. And of course, the city, Valencia, did not suffer much. The communities that are affected are outside Valencia. So I think that the museum that I mentioned, the Museum of the Museo de la Comarca, did a great job facilitating the space for the collections to have a place to arrive, but they were not envisioning. I don't think that Clara was expecting that so many people were going to bring their photos, and because they excuse me, the call for photos came from Filmoteca. Filmoteca was like, don't throw away the photos. And then Clara came with that survey for people to bring films, but people started to bring photos. And of course, the community is already very much demoralized and sad for what happened to the community. Losing houses, being incommunicated because there was no transportation. It was impossible to bring cars to the area. So on top of everything, you don't want to tell them, no, we cannot take your pictures. But I don't see that they were expecting that amount of community. So for me, really what it makes me think is we have to educate the communities about disaster preparedness and disaster planning. We usually think, at least in the States, we see a lot of things of what to pack in the case of a storm. And so they tell us, have a can opener, can food, water, a lantern, a blanket, etc. But nobody's really thinking about other kind of cultural artifacts that are important to families. And I think that the wonderful opportunity to do this is Home Movie Day. Because in Home Movie Day, we are approached by a lot of people that do not come from cultural heritage institutions. That's a day of contact with the community. And it's a wonderful opportunity to tell people, don't take for granted that you're always going to have this album. And then the other thing, of course, is to be educated about geography. I don't think that disaster preparedness works the same in the Caribbean, in Hawaii, as in New York, or the Andean zone in Bolivia. So you also have to know the geography, and you have to know how climate change is affecting your community. How is it affecting your geographical zone? What you have to be prepared for.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if any of you don't have questions, and I actually have a question. In the region that you're talking about working in, I was wondering how much is disaster response as a philosophy like promoted within higher educational institutions or professional institutions? Is that something that is talked about very much or taught?
I wouldn't be able to answer that because I don't live there. The article that I mentioned is very complete, and I can infer from the article that is non-existent. I don't think that that happens in many high schools, but of course I did high school 11,000 years ago. I don't think that that's really. I don't think that we're really talking about disaster preparedness in high schools and
Universities?
in universities. I think that we do it, we take for granted that because I am a professor, I direct the NYU MIA program, and of course we do it here, that because I am talking to my student, everybody knows what this is about. But I mean, just the simple fact that people do not back up, the simple fact that people never organize their phones and their digital assets, the simple fact that people keep telling you, I have everything in the cloud. Yeah. And for starters, the cloud is not up there. The cloud is interoceanic. The fact that people do not know that I'm not an expert in photography, but I know that those albums that people used to buy in Walmart, Target, Kmart, etc., are non-professional and are very bad for photos because that has an acid that deteriorates photography over the years. But nobody's telling us this. Yeah. The fact that a lot of people have home movies in floppy disks, DVDs, CDs, VHS, and they are in a corner of the house under the old phone book that or an encyclopedia that nobody's looking at, and then the tape is moving and the tape is getting damaged. So I think that this is like everything, because I keep telling my students that we have to do more digital preservation in high school. I think that we have to do more disaster preparedness and disaster recovery talking in high school. And this will be a great way to engage students that are always looking at their phone, probably because they don't find many practical things to do. They can be a wonderful workforce when disasters happen. And of course, educating everybody that planning is cheaper than recovering. But I did ask when I was, I went there at the beginning of March, but I interviewed Clara for this research, for this presentation. And I did have a very blunt question. How would you evaluate governmental support? And she said, null. And there, I mean, nationwide, I mean, in the area, there are a lot of legal cases against the government because of negligence. And particularly because of the housing situation. Those apartments were built in areas that constructing companies were aware that these are high flooding areas of Valencia. But we have a lot of digital nomads. People get kicked out of Valencia and people go to live in these cheap places. You know that Valencia, Barcelona, Madrid is full of people from the so-called global north making extraordinary salaries of $8,000, $10,000 and living there paying rents of 700 euros or something. And people are very little conscious of what they are doing to the locals, pushing them to live in these marginal zones.
Okay, and anything online? Okay. All right, well, I think we are good for now, and so I definitely want to follow up with you, so you may get an email from me later on. Thank you
you.
so much for
Thank you
this.
so much. Thank you for coming. I know that there are many people presenting today. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and listen to me. Okay. Enjoy the conference. I'm very jealous that you guys are there and I'm in cold New York. Okay.
One day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.